Governance. I hope you remember that we have discussed in the last session that we had talked about the corporate governance, and I had basically introduced the topic to you. Now, I hope you also remember from our last discussion that as far as the corporate governance framework is concerned here in our country, basically it borrows a lot from the 2013 amendment in the Companies Act 1956, the amendment which took place in 2013, as well as the clause 49 in the listing agreement, which all the firms which want to get publicly listed in any of the stock exchanges in India, they have to sign with the SEBI. So basically these two form the backbone or the structure of the corporate governance practices here in India, and today we'll be discussing some of the good practices that have been provided for in these two documents, the 2013 amendment to the Companies Act and the clause 49 of the listing agreement. So let's have a look at all these practices now. The first provision is, and please understand there are so many provisions, so many issues that corporate governance practices deal with. I'll only be browsing through a brief part of it, right? So one of the provisions is that the non-executive director should comprise at least 50% of the board of directors. I hope you remember that board of directors basically is a body which is formed to approve the business expansion plans, diversification strategies, to decide the compensation packages for the top management, for the CEO, chief executive officer, and the other members of the top management. And plus it also provides direction to the executives of the firm, executives who are actually working in the firm. That is why they are called executives, right? So board of directors is basically there to provide them some kind of a direction, guideline, and to ensure that they are moving in the right direction. So it will keep a check on all the activities, it will keep a check on all the plans and the implementation of plans. So it is a body which also supervises the top management. So that is what is the job of board of directors. And there are members in the board of directors. Some members are called executive directors. Why are they called executive directors? Because they are member of the board of directors, but they are executives of the firm also. So they are members of the firm. So they could be people from the senior management, top management, and they are working with the firm also, and they are also part of the board of directors. And then there are some non-executive directors who are not working with the firm. They are part of the board of directors, but they are not working with the firm, right? Now, what is the logic behind this particular provision? Please understand, whenever we are going to discuss these good practices, corporate governance practices, we have to understand the logic, why this particular provision is there. Now, what is the logic behind this kind of provision? Please understand. See, if a director is executive director, now since he is working with the company, he is an executive of the company also, though he is part of the board of directors also, he would be afraid of, he might feel inhibited, and he may not be very much ready to bring to light any wrongdoings, right? He may not want to risk his own career by pointing out at some wrongdoings by the top management, right? So this is a problem with the the executive directors. Now, if somebody who is not working with the company is only part of the board of directors and he is getting paid a sitting fee would be paid because you are sitting in the meetings of the board of directors. So when you are sitting there, so you will be paid some sitting fee, so that he is not getting any remuneration from the company, he is not employee of the company, he is not part of the executive staff, he is simply a member of the board of directors. Now, since he has no relationship with the company apart from being the member of the board of directors, he will be less afraid to bring to light such wrongdoings. He would be less afraid to bring the top management to task, and that is why we are saying that 50% of the members, this provision has come up as per the clause 49 as I have already discussed with you the clause 49 in the listing agreement, this particular provision has come up that at least 50%, which means the majority membership of the board of directors should come from non-executive directors who are not employees of the company, so that they can actually bring to light any wrongdoing, or so that they can actually take the top management to task, so that they can grill the top management regarding various decisions that they take. Is this okay? So this is the logic behind this particular provision, right? At least one women director. 2013 Act has provided for this provision, has made this provision that all the companies should have at least one women director. So one member in the board of directors should be women. There is a logic behind this also. Number one women director would mean that there would be representation to women related issues in the firm also, gender issues in the firm also. For example, supposing there are instances of sexual harassment in the firm, if there is no women in the board of directors, there is no women director, the board is less likely to take these complaints seriously. But if there is a woman who is there, then the board is likely to take up this particular issue more seriously. So this is one major reason why this particular provision is there, right? And then naturally what might also happen, many a times the appointment to the top post in the firm, they are approved by the BOD, the board of directors. Now naturally, if some women is contesting, if some woman is a candidate for the topmost positions in the firm, maybe the divisional head or maybe the chief executive officer, having another woman as a member of the board of directors will allow a fair chance to these women candidates also. Otherwise it may so happen that the board of directors, most of them would be male, they might be prejudiced against such female candidates, and they may not appoint such female candidates. So these kind of prejudices are also taken care of by appointing one woman director, right? Non-executive directors, clause 49, according to the clause 49 of the listing agreement. Now what is the provision for non-executive directors? I hope you remember, non-executive directors, they are not members of the company, they are not executives of the firm, they are not being paid any remuneration by the firm apart from the sitting fee in the board meetings. So non-executive directors, they have to adhere to a code of conduct. So this provision is there that they have to adhere to a code of conduct. The compensation will be fixed by the board of directors and it will have to be approved by the shareholders. Now this is a provision. So what will be the compensation for the non-executive directors will have to be fixed by the board of directors and it has to be approved by the shareholders. So no compensation would be fixed without the approval of the shareholders. And compensation should also be disclosed in annual report. In the annual reports that the firm is filing, annual disclosures it is making, it has to mention what is the compensation that is being paid to non-executive directors. Now this is provision in clause 49 of the listing agreement. Now again, clause 49 of the listing agreement also has something to say about the audit committees. I hope you remember, why do we have audit committees? I discussed this in the last session also. Audit committees are there so that they can take care of any financial impropriety. They can have a look at whether all the rules of financial propriety are being observed. There is no misrepresentation of figures. There is no misrepresentation of profit amount or the volume of sales or the financial position of the company. So for that there is an audit committee. Now please understand, now this audit committee which is there, which it will take care of basically all these things, and it will ensure that the company does not make any financial disclosures which are not true. The company does not indulge in financial impropriety, does not try to window dress its financial position just to improve its image in the market, in the stock market. So these things are taken care of by the audit committee. Now what has been said about the audit committees? They should provide anti-fraud and risk management mechanism so that there is no fraud which might take place and all the risks are properly covered. So now this is one thing that the audit committee will have to do. It will have to ensure, it will have to have a mechanism, it will have to devise a mechanism so that no fraud may take place and the risks are properly taken care of. Now what could be a risk? Risk could be when the company, because of various issues, is unable to pay the amount it has borrowed from a bank or from some other financial entity, which is called the liquidity risk. So this is a big risk for the company if the company defaults on a loan repayment. This could be because of various reasons. This could be because of mismanagement also. Now this audit committee has to devise mechanism to ensure that such risks are managed well. Then they also have to provide for anti-fraud mechanism to ensure that such frauds do not take place in the company. Now again, audit committee should include independent directors. Now who are independent directors? Independent directors are those who are not from the company. They are only members of the board of directors. They are not members of the company. They are not employees of the company, and that is why they are called independent. And independent directors would be more likely to ensure that such frauds don't take place and the risks are properly covered, right? So that is why it has been said that the audit committee should include independent directors. What is the job of the audit committee? That also has been specified. It also has to oversee ethics and compliance mechanism. What do we mean by this? Ethics, I hope we remember what we have discussed in corporate ethics. So there has got to be some kind of a document which talks about the ethical practices that the company will observe. So the audit committee has to see to it that these ethics are observed in the dealings of the company. For example, that the company does not bribe some customer or some prospective customer to bag its order, right? So this is one ethical conduct that has to be practiced by the company. And who will supervise, who will take care of this particular aspect, that the company is conducting its business ethically? It is for the audit committee to do this, right? Likewise, we have compliance mechanism. Compliance mechanisms are basically how you are complying with the laws and the regulations which are there. Regulatory bodies are there, so there are so many laws which are there, so you have to comply with laws. For example, one law is that, for example, that you have to pay the corporate tax, or you have to spend a particular amount of your profit on CSR activities. Now whether the company is complying, whether the management is ensuring compliance with these laws, they are abiding by these laws, or are they violating it? Because if they violate it, that will ultimately bring bad name for the company, and it might attract lawsuits, it might attract action by the regulatory agencies. So this should never happen. All the laws which are there, all the rules, regulations which are there, they have to be complied with. And for that purpose, to ensure that this is happening, who will comply with the law? It will be the top management will ensure that compliance with the law. However, who will be overlooking it? Who will be overseeing it? Who will be supervising that the top management is actually ensuring compliance with law? It would be for the audit committee to do this, right? Again, there is a whistleblower mechanism also. Now what do we mean by whistleblower? Whistleblower means when you see some wrong thing happening, you blow the whistle. You bring the wrongdoings to light. So this is called whistleblower mechanism, and there are people who do this. They are known as whistleblowers. So for example, let's say that the company is window dressing its accounts and it is trying to exaggerate its profits in its annual financial statements. And if somebody gets to know about that, if some employee gets to know about that, what will he do? If he brings this particular fact to the knowledge of the top management, or to the knowledge of the board of directors, or to the general public, now he will be considered a whistleblower. So whistleblower mechanisms are there, and such whistleblowers, they have to be provided protection also, because they are actually bringing to light all the wrongdoings by the firm. So they have to be encouraged, and that is why there is a whistleblower mechanism which ensures that such whistleblowers are not penalized by the firm for having brought to light the wrongdoings of the firm. So they should not be penalized, and there has to be a mechanism for this. Now this mechanism is again overseen by the audit committee. It is also monitored by the audit committee. Again, as I said, audit committee is also responsible for ensuring, and I have discussed this in the beginning also, that they are responsible for ensuring transparency and accuracy of the financial reporting and disclosures. So whether the balance sheet actually depicts the true picture, or it is just papering over the problems that the company is facing, whether the profit and loss account depicts the accurate picture or not. Is there any fudging of figures? Are the figures being fudged? They are not being accurately presented in the financial statements, profit and loss account, or the balance sheet. This is something that has to be taken care of by Audit Committee, right? Now let us talk about the provision for institutional investors. Now what do we mean by institutional? Institutional investors, for example, to put it simply, institutions may also want to, some organizations, some group of people may also want to invest in a company. So many a times, retail investors like us, individually, we might want to invest our money in the company, and then there are some institutional investors. For example, I'll give you an idea. There are pension funds. Now, what are pension funds? I'll give you a background just to make you understand what institutional investors are. Pension funds, what happens is they basically collect some money. Let's say I'm working and I want to have a reliable source of income once I retire. So that is what I mean by pension. So what will I do? I'll start investing some money today, right? And this money would earn me interest once I have retired from my job. So maybe every year I'm investing 1 lakh and I'll keep investing this for the next 3 decades, and then once I retire, then I'll get some return, which will be the principal amount plus the interest that I've earned on my investment. So this is what happens. Now how do I invest? I invest with a pension fund, right? So a pension fund will actually collect such investments from all the people, and then once they retire, the fund will provide them some regular source of income. This is fine. So this is what the pension fund does. Now please understand, many pension funds do what? They collect money from the investors, right? So they collect money from people like me who want to have a retirement plan, who want to have savings for the retirement for the retired life. So what do? They collect money, and then what will they do? They will invest it in a company, because the returns generally in the stock markets are relatively higher if you remain invested for a long period of time. So they would invest in a company. So this can be an example of a institutional investor. So this is an example of an institutional investor. I hope you understand what we mean by institutional investors now, right? So now what are the provisions for institutional investors? They will have to be treated equitably, even if they are from some foreign countries. They may be domestic institutional investors or foreign institutional investors. Regardless of this particular fact, they would be treated in equitable fashion. No discrimination between them by the company, right? The institutional investors, now again, now this is a right which has been bestowed on the institutional investors, equal treatment. On the other hand, they are also expected to fulfill one obligation. They are expected to participate in the annual general meeting in a very active manner. So it is expected that annual general meeting takes place, as the name suggests, once in a year, in general meeting where all the investors are present, where all the, be it the minority shareholders, be it the majority shareholders, those who own maybe 20-30% of the shares, they are also present. Those who own maybe 0.001% of the total shares, they are also present. And many times votings also take place on various resolutions. So naturally, if a company has to do well, it has to have an active base of investors who consider all the decisions which are to be taken by the company, and they vote depending on whether they think the decisions are good or bad for the company, right? So this is what a company requires to perform well, and that is what is expected from the institutional investors. They are expected to participate actively in the annual general meetings. And now it is not very difficult also, because see, voting and participation can happen online also. For example, the participation can be online on a particular meeting app, and they can listen to the speeches of the CEOs and the members of the board of directors, and then they can vote electronically also. This kind of provision is also there. So it is not as difficult as it used to be earlier in 1980s and 90s, where to participate you had to go to the place where the annual general meeting is being organized or being held. Now this is not required. So it is expected of the institutional investors. This is an obligation for them that they should be participating actively in the annual general meetings. Again, how do they vote? I told you that many a times some resolutions are put to vote in such general meetings, right? Now these resolutions are voted upon by the various shareholders. Now how have these institutional investors voted? What is their record of voting? Whether they have supported the motion or whether they have gone against the resolution, whether they have opposed the resolution, what has been their voting pattern, and what reasons have they given for assenting or dissenting, for agreeing, supporting a particular resolution or for opposing a particular resolution? What reasons they have given? All this has to be publicly disclosed. Now this is an obligation for the firm, right? This one is an obligation from the firm, that the voting patterns and the reasons for voting have to be publicly disclosed by the firm. Is this okay? So thank you very much. In this session I'll keep it short because it is a little complicated kind of a discussion, so I'll keep it short. In the next session that we'll have, I'll wrap up the discussion on corporate governance. Please go through it again and again. Once you go through it again and again, you would be able to better understand the provisions I have discussed in this particular session. Thank you very much.